Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Today, we are lucky to have Anju Fujioka, sexual assault lawyer, to give us some tips about independent legal advice for the survivors of sexual assault. Thank you very much, Anju, for being here with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. So good evening, everyone, and hello to all of those watching this afterwards. My name is Anju Fujioka, and I'm a lawyer specializing in sex assault and sexual abuse. Today, I will be speaking to you about the Independent Legal Advice for Survivors program. I'll refer to it as the ILA program for short. It is quite a mouthful. As just so you're aware, I am not affiliated with the program. This isn't supposed to be a Ontario government sanctioned webinar either. It is just for informational purposes because I find that not a lot of people are aware about this free service that is available to all Ontarians who have suffered from sexual assault. So just by way of introduction, about me, I wear a few hats. So I'm a civil lawyer at Beckett Personal Injury Lawyers, where I help victims of sexual violence obtain some compensation. So that's an office out of London, Ontario, but I represent survivors across Canada. I also work as the Canadian sexual and gender-based violence expert in an initiative funded by Global Affairs. And I'm also the supervising lawyer for LISA, which is Legal Information for Sexual Assault. Different from the ILA program we're talking about, but it is a newer program at Western University where students can get independent legal information about their options. So that's only available to current students at Western, but that's another program that exists. But again, today we're going to be talking about the Independent Legal Advice program available in Ontario to any survivors. So if you have any questions after this presentation about what we covered today or about sexual assault law in general, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Now, before we kind of delve into things, just a quick disclaimer on confidentiality. So if you ask any questions or put anything into the chat during the Q&A portion, please make sure your questions are general. There's no way to really ensure confidentiality during this presentation. And it will be recorded and available online for the public. So another reason to kind of keep any questions to very general ones. And again, this presentation provides legal information, not advice. So if you have specific questions about the law, how it might apply to you and your situation, that's something that you'd want to consult with a lawyer. Instead of just relying on resources like this one that are supposed to provide general information. So today, in terms of what we're covering, just a few points. It's not supposed to be a very long program. But first we'll talk about why survivors of sexual assault might require legal advice to begin with. And then we'll talk about the ILA program, what it is, who can use it, what kind of information you're able to get from it, and how to apply. So it will be quick. The slides should be also available with the recording, so you can go back and watch. Now, the first question first topic before I explain what this program is all about, I think it's important to think about why a survivor might benefit from legal advice. So I'll also use the language of survivor a lot. Some people would rather be, identify more as a victim, others as complainants. I just tend to use the language of survivor as a catch-all. So why would someone require legal advice after an assault? I think the quick answer to that is that the legal system provides many options to survivors. So some common options, engaging with the criminal legal system, that's the process that typically starts with reporting to the police. That's usually something that comes to mind for a lot of people. But there's also seeking compensation through the civil court system. It might be, there might be an option to go through tribunals. So bodies like the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, depending on the situation. You might have the option of making complaints under workplace policy, or maybe there's a labor union that might be able to assist. There may be an option to make complaints to a professional body that regulates its members. So that would mean, for example, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, for example, would regulate the conduct of its doctor members, or the Teachers College in Ontario would be the body that regulates the conduct of the teachers there. So bodies like that that are responsible for its professional members, a lot of them have formal complaint mechanisms in there as well. And of course, making complaints through a university or a post-secondary college complaint process. These are just some of the options that might be available. And we don't always think about, all of these vast options that are potentially available to survivors, especially not in the immediate aftermath of something like that happening. So that's why, there are a lot of legal and non-legal options that are available to survivors. Knowing about them alone might be a reason you want to go talk to a lawyer. And I list non-legal options, and that's not just about counseling or, getting those other community supports. It can also be about things that you don't typically think about. So things like restorative justice options, or sometimes they're called alternative justice or transformative justice options, but really something that really doesn't involve the formal court system, or any other types of mechanisms that might be available to you that are legal or quasi-legal. So figuring out what options are available, whether there are any time limits to start processes, what the pros and cons are of each type of process that is available to you, and understanding concretely what these processes look like. These are all really big, complicated questions, and it's hard to find that information at your fingertips, even harder to see, each case is very different. So it's hard to get that information about what all is available to you. What should I do? What do I want to do? And it's also important to know how these various options can interact with each other. So sometimes information that you end up giving or providing as part of an investigation, say a professional investigation or a campus investigation of sexual assault, that might end up being used in other processes, say, for example, in the criminal process or a civil lawsuit, for example. So there is a lot of interplay that could happen if you're engaging with more than one system. And likewise, there might be situations where by choosing one option, for example, if you choose the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, you don't have the option of suing in civil court. So it can get pretty complex. And speaking with a lawyer who can help you figure that out, that's something that can be very, very important in safeguarding your rights. And it just also helps you make informed choices about what you want to do. When you know what to expect, when you know what reporting to the police looks like, or how that investigation process is going to go ahead, or what the steps are in a typical civil lawsuit, or what the challenges in your particular case might be. Having that information will just help you, make a decision in a way that you're not caught off guard later on when you try to engage with these processes, or it minimizes the chance that you're going to be caught off guard like that. So in terms of legal processes and those options, we've talked about that a little bit, but there's also another thing that's really important, and it's that survivors also have various legal rights in different processes. So for example, there's legislation or laws that set out the different types of rights that survivors have when they are victims of violent crime, or when they are victims of sexual assault. For example, in the criminal system, right, survivors a lot of times don't know that they actually have the right to be heard in different ways. So they have the right to participate in certain ways. They have the right to get information about the case. And all of these things, are things that are in place so that the victim or the survivor, and in a criminal case, they're called a complainant, but that they have some of these substantive rights, they need to be protected. So, you have a right to know when the next court dates are. You have the right to be able to make a victim impact statement, or to be able to access testimonial aids, or at least apply for them. So all of these things are things that are good to know when survivors engage with the criminal justice system. It helps you navigate that system. It helps you advocate for them, right? What you don't ask for, what you don't know. So even just knowing what things are available to you, what options are available to you, will help you ask for those should the need arise. And the last point here is actually really, really important, is that the solicitor-client relationship provides confidentiality. So by that, what I mean is that when you seek independent legal advice from a lawyer, you're the lawyer's client. So that means that your conversations with that lawyer are protected by this very high level of confidentiality that we call, the lawyer-client or the solicitor-client privilege. What that means is that the lawyer can't, disclose that information to someone else. The police can't request that information. The accused person can't request information about the conversations that you're having with your lawyer. So it is a place where you can comfortably speak about, your options. You can talk things through with your lawyer without fear that it is then going to be taken and then disclosed in some other proceeding and potentially against your interest. So that's something important to keep in mind as well when you're getting legal advice or independent legal advice, is that it is a relationship that is very safe and protected. So in a nutshell, what is this ILA program then, now that we have a fair bones understanding of why this might be important? The ILA program is a program in Ontario that allows victims of sexual assault to access up to 4 hours of free legal advice by phone or video. There's some clinics that also provide this in person, but typically phone or video. And the lawyers on this roster are selected by the government. So they were selected based on their experience with sexual assault cases. Some of them have more criminal legal expertise, some of them more civil, some of them do a lot of both. And the fact that they're survivor-centric in their approach, that was a criteria that they applied when selecting these lawyers a long time ago. Now, in terms of what this program is able to offer, they're able to offer legal advice, but they can't prepare documents typically or represent you in court. So say you apply and you're approved for this program, you can meet with one or more lawyers on a list that they'll send to you. You don't have to use all the vouchers with the same lawyer. You can, use each one of the 1 hour vouchers with different lawyers if that's something you'd prefer to do. But you can speak with them. You can choose the lawyers. You will know what kind of things they tend to specialize in, so that you can select who you'd like to contact. And then they can give you advice, they can explain procedures, they can talk you through the different things we talked about before. So what each of these processes looks like, or what is involved. They can talk you through the facts of the case, or perhaps prepare you before you go to the police. But they're not going to submit, for example, an application to the tribunals for you or represent your interests in court. That's something that is outside of the scope of this program. If there is a possibility that you can continue working with the lawyer who you speak with, through the ILA program, but in that case, how those fees work, all of that needs to be arranged with the lawyer independently. It's not going to be covered by the government's voucher system. Now, next question is, who can use the program? So it is pretty broad. This program is available to all eligible women, men, trans, and gender diverse folks. If you are at least 16 years old, you live in Ontario, and the sexual assault happened in Ontario. So those are the parameters. And sexual assault in that case is defined pretty broadly. So you'll see on the website, it'll have the same language, that you're a victim of sexual assault if someone forces you to participate in any type of sexual activity without your consent. So this can occur in many forms, does not have to include intercourse. What that means is any kind of touching that's sexualized, if you didn't want it, you should be eligible for this program as long as you're at least 16, you're in Ontario, and the sex assault happened in Ontario. Now, you might be thinking, what if I was 14 when this happened, or I was 12 when this happened, but I'm at least 16 now, I'm 18 now, I'm 25 now. Then you are eligible. There's no time limit. All that matters is that you're at least 16 when you apply for this program and you access this program. How old you were, how long ago the sex assault was, those are really immaterial. They don't matter, and they don't affect your eligibility at all. Now, and towards the end, how do you apply to this program? Thankfully, it is very simple. So I'll have a sample voucher request form on the next slide so you can see how simple it is. But you complete the voucher request form that's available on their site, and then you email the completed form. And then if you're eligible, then you'll receive an email within 3 business days with a list of the lawyers you're able to contact and how to use your vouchers. And if you're not eligible, you'll get an email with the why. And again, once you get your vouchers, so typically they'll send you 2 vouchers for 1 hour each. And then you can request 2 more, so a total of 4. You don't have to use all the vouchers with the same lawyer. So I'm not sure if this is big enough for you to see on the screen, but that's sample applications. Like I said, it's simple and short. It's really a 1 1/4 page application or a form. And it doesn't ask very probing questions at all. It really just, has you put in your contact information and the bare bones of what is required. Essentially, did it happen, in Ontario? And, was it a sexual assault? But that is all that's required. So typically you shouldn't be rejected. I personally have not seen people being rejected or being deemed ineligible, unless of course it's a date of birth issue or they are not residents of Ontario, since this is a program funded by the government of Ontario. Okay, so that actually brings me to the end here. So like I said, I'm not on the roster, but I'm happy to discuss any questions that you might have if you or someone's been sexually assaulted. My practice does focus mostly on civil suits, so that's suing for compensation. But if you have questions about this ILA program or just more questions generally about options after a sexual assault, I'm happy to pick up the phone or hop on a call with you. And on this slide, you will see the link to the website for the ILA program. That website essentially sets out a lot of what I've said in terms of the application process, and it has a link to the form itself that you're able to fill and send. And if you have any issues with the form or you have other questions about the ILA program, you can also contact their toll-free number. It should be 24/7, 365, or at least 7 days a week. So that's somewhere you can also get some assistance when it comes to the ILA program. All right, so that brings, I want to thank you all for your attention, and hopefully there was some information here that was helpful, even if it's just knowing that this is a service that's available out there for any survivors.
Thank you so much, Anju, for this wonderful, fruitful presentation. There is a lot of interesting services, however, not so many people know about them. Actually, you've answered one of my questions in advance. I was going to ask, what if somebody has an issue with the application, some kind of a language barrier, but you've mentioned that they could contact the toll-free number and they will find the assistance. Hopefully this assistance is provided in different languages.
One would hope. I would have to double check on that. I don't want to make any promises, and some of my information will be outdated, but I would imagine that if you reach out, there is also an email there on their site. I'm not sure if I put it up there, or it might have been put in one of my earlier slides on how to apply. But I would imagine if you sent an email there and kind of indicated that you might need assistance in other languages, even if the phone line wasn't immediately available in the language you need, they might be able to assist.
Thank you so much. And actually, my other question was, what I've got from your presentation, there is no financial eligibility criteria.
None whatsoever.
Yeah, so whatever your income and family status, unless you're resident of Ontario and the assault happened within Ontario jurisdiction, then and you are at that certain eligible age, then that's it.
Exactly. And I should also note, since we're on the topic, that for others, right? Because I understand this is a webinar, so similar programs do exist in other provinces as well. Not all of them. Some of them are pilots, some of them are more permanent, and their eligibility criteria could differ from province to province, and or sometimes they're limited to certain cities. But if something happened to you, again, and it wasn't in Ontario, you don't fit the mandate of this, then you can, is the option of Googling kind of advice for sexual assault and put in the province you're in, and typically that pulls up programs if that's available to you. If not, contacting a lawyer, they might be able to redirect you that way, or your local sexual assault center. Those are all really great places to contact if you're trying to figure out who can I talk to, or who can give me some, legal advice, especially free legal advice. So it's always worth, I think, looking. If you're not in Ontario, look for those programs or reach out. I'm happy to share information if it's any other jurisdiction that I'm actually aware of.
Thank you so much, and I'm pleased to let everyone know that within the upcoming weeks, this presentation will be interpreted into 3 different languages, so it would be available for more people in order to try to get over any language barriers and to make sure that everyone is getting the information they need.
Wonderful.
So
Well,
thank you. So I'll double check if there is any other questions on the social media platforms. I'm encouraging our audience, if they have any questions, please type it to the chat. In case of none, then I would thank you, Anju, for your time and for your previous session with us. Both of them were wonderful. Your effort and support is highly appreciated by Rights and Responsibilities Awareness Initiative. Thank you very much indeed.
it's my pleasure. All right. Well, have a lovely evening.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.